Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Hope you are doing great in your life. So yeah, let's start with the agenda of this video. So what we are going to say is in the view grid how to display these links, right? So this is something we have added in the view grid and this is what we can see. And here this is a default button which we can see. So as you already know, if you want to display a button in the view grid, then in the dashboard, sorry, in the view grid, we are having this action, right? So whatever we put here, that comes here as that button. But let's suppose I have a requirement where I need to display a drop down or maybe a link or maybe my customized button, right? So how to do that? So we are going to look into that, and apart from that, the next thing is if I click on this view details button, then I should be navigated to a next page, okay, or to a different screen where I should be able to see the details of this entry. So that is what we are going to do, how to do that. So let's begin with how to display this link in the view grid. So I have created this dashboard. I have already created this stuff. I don't want to repeat this again. So I have just presetted this data, which is nothing but simple. We are just getting all the dashboard data from this plugin, all the submissions from this module, which is present into its schema, and that we are like mapping it to this dashboard data. So if you see the configuration form for view grid, it's like pretty simple. We have the source, which is dashboard data, and apart from that we have the three fields which we want to show. And here the magic comes with this action one, right? So in this data workflow DWF map data, I have created this create field, okay, and using this create field I have created that anchor tag, which is something reflecting like view details here. So what is here, let me just copy paste this into the notepad. So here if you can see, uh, I have used a normal anchor tag, right, which we use basically in HTML. And here this part is the class of that anchor. So if we want to add the class, we can make some changes here and put our customized class. And this piece is something the href, which means if I want to go up to a particular page, then I can put here that URL. So I don't want to do it anything here, I just put it as hash. And here if you see, I have added this function which is on click function. What it will do is it will trigger a event which happens after a button click, okay. So with this code or with this HTML, what would happen is if I click on that view details button, so in the UNQORK console I will get a button click variable, and with that button click variable the value would be whatever the row I have clicked on. So for example, let me show you this. So let me first show you the data of this view grid just to give you a better understanding. So if I just hit this angular command, so here in the dashboard data we have this entire thing, right? We have all these things and we have this underscore ID also. So what I want to do is if I click on view details, I want to somehow capture that this row is clicked, and I want to capture this underscore ID, right, with that button click variable. So for that we have used this thing which I have just shown you, like button click, and here we are like passing this string which is candidate, okay. So we can make it anything with that. Maybe we can put it as user here. So the string will come like this. If I click on that, then the string would come like, or that value would come like button click, and here we would be having candidate and followed by this underscore ID. So for this particular row, let's see what is our ID, right? So this is our ID. So this ID would come here like this, right? So with every view details link click, we'll get this variable, right? So with this we can like trim this part, okay, and then we can play around with that. So let's do that. So when I click on that button, let's see what happens. So if I click on this view details button, so this is what we will get, right? As mentioned, like button click variable is there, and after that we have this candidate, and then we have this ID. So let's replace this candidate with user, So let's copy that HTML that we have created here. Perfect. If I click on this view details here, now you will see that button click variable is there and we have this user. So now our goal is to get this piece, right? Okay, so when I click on this, let's build that logic. What should happen on the click? So for that, let me grab this decision component, and here I will write maybe the name as rule on click, and here we will keep this on watch because this is something would be used to watch the button click, right? As soon as button clicked is done, this will trigger. So that's why, and I have kept this on watch, and here in this inputs I have selected this property ID as button click, and here we will write it as maybe contains. Okay, and here we will like save that thing, right? We want to trim that particular button click variable and save into some other variable, so we would be having that particular ID which has been clicked, right? So let's create a variable. Maybe I can write selected ID. So this is not there, but let me save this first, and let me just add a variable which is something selected ID, right? Whatever we have mentioned there, selected ID. Yeah, so on the rule click, we'll just map that to value. Yeah, button click, if it contains user, then yeah, so if I click on this, then what we are going to do is we are going to look for this button click, right, using the watch, and this button click should contains user. So that's why we have put here as user, and in the selected ID value we can now trim that particular piece. So what I want is I want to remove this user piece and just want to get this ID, right? So how to do that is using this mid Excel formula. We have a formula which is mid, which is something Excel formula. You can just search for that formula if you want more details. But how that formula works is you need to write in this way, and here we need to pass whatever the string that we want to use, and here I want to trim this part. I want to trim the string from this to this, right? I want to just get this. So what I will do is I will take from this to this. So what is the number of, like, what is that column number? It's from 5 to 29, right? Here if you see on the screen, I can see the number of at what position this is, right? So I can write here as 5 and 29. So if I use this formula in that decision, let me put it, where is my, yeah, if I put this here and click save, then let's see if we are getting that selected ID. If I click on that view details button, let me refresh. Yeah, so if I click on this, so our rule got triggered. Now let's see what's there in that uh, selected ID, right? So we have this as null. I think I have made some minor mistake. So here instead of putting a, we need to pass what we need to actually pass, right? So here we are going to pass the variable of button click, right? So I haven't mentioned that alias here, so that's why we were getting here null. So now I have mentioned this button click variable as a, so that is what I'm passing here. So let's try out. So if I click on view details, rule got triggered. Let's see if we have that value or not. Okay, so in the selected ID, we can see whatever the ID we have clicked on or whatever the row we have clicked on. So that particular ID is something visible in the selected ID, right? With this. So cool. So 50% of our work is done. Now we need to go to a different page and we should be able to see the details of this, right? So let's do that. Before going to that process, let me show you one thing, like from where I am putting this data, right? Whatever this dashboard data I am able to see, or whatever these submissions are there, right, which are coming from the schema. So from where I'm storing, let me show you that, so it will give you more clarity like how we are going to proceed with our next steps. So this is a model which I have created, and here I'm capturing all the information, right? I'm capturing middle name, first name, last name, gender, SSN, all those stuff. So here is it. So if I put this thing and now if I click on submit button, so this submit button is something kept on action type as save, which means if I click on that button, yeah, if I click on this button, all this data would be saved into this default module schema. Okay, so if I click on this, just observe this URL right on the top, which is very important for our next step. So if I click on submit, now this data is stored and we can see this is what the URL we have got. So we have already seen right how this URL is. So first piece which I am highlighting now, so this piece is something the display part, right? This is something used to display these things. So as this is a module, so we are displaying this simple form now, this simple form module with this URL. And the next is submission, right? So whatever the submit operation we did, all this data got stored, and that stored operation have that submission ID, which is like this. And now we are getting the submission ID from this schema, right? So this is a schema ID. In our case, we are saving into the same module. So this module display module ID and the actual schema module is same. So that is why we can see both are same, but this is submitting a submission ID. So let me show you one thing. So can we do one thing, or like can we think of this way? If I copy this URL and open a new tab and paste this, what would happen is, see, I would get all the data right with this. Why I'm getting this data? This data is everything. I mean, all this data is kept, is visible on this, right? But with this URL, what I can do is I can fetch all the data which is associated with this submission ID and what which is present in this schema, right? So using this thing, we can go ahead with our next step. Okay, so let's build that second piece here, which is to navigate to a different page. So for that, let me just use one more rule here, which is called as navigate. And here what I will do, I will just use here selected ID. So just see what I'm doing. So post that I will explain you what things, I mean why we did that particular piece. And here let me take, maybe I will just put the output as rule here. Okay, anything I can put here. Here the magic comes, right? So here we have the option as page or page open. So we want to open a page in a different tab, right? So for that we will use this page open. So if I want to open a page in the same screen or in the same tab, I can use action type as page. But let's think of our scenario where we want to open in a different tab. Cool. So here we need to pass that URL where we need to navigate. So for that, let's build that URL, right? So as we have seen, if I use this URL, okay, then I will get this data, right? So with using this principle, what we will do here, we will form that URL like this, where we would be passing what is our submission ID, what is the schema, and what is that display. Okay, so we will form that particular URL. So how to do that is, I've just kept that in notepad. So here this is a way we can do. So we can use this concatenate method, which is something used to concatenate string. So this is one string, which is something the display part, right, which is this. So we don't need to mention these things. Okay, so these are something by default comes when we are dealing with UNQORK. Whatever the current environment is, it will come. We need to build or we need to continue from this part, right? So for that, this is the URL where we have this display piece as one string, and here we have a module ID. So here we will dynamically pass that module ID which we want to show as a display module, right? And this is a submission ID, and this is a slash again. After submission ID we have, after module ID we have that slash, right? So that is what we are doing with this. This is a submission ID and this is the schema ID. So let's use this with in our actual decision and replace with the actual values. So before this video I have just created one read-only view module, which is something would be used to view the details. Okay, so this is the read-only module which I have created, and here all these fields I have used which are something read-only. Okay, let me just copy this module ID where we want to navigate. So here I will, okay, but before that let me just put this here, this URL, and then we will start replacing this with the values. Now let me put this module ID here, which is this. And yes, submission ID is something which we have selected, right? Whatever the row we have selected, that is our submission ID. So here I will replace it with selected ID. And what is our schema? We are storing all those things into this, right? So that's why I will take this schema ID as this, right? So let's try out. And one more thing I wanted to highlight here before testing this out. So here we have selected this thing, right, which is the selected submission ID. So we need to replace it with the actual alias that we have put here. Okay, so here I have put E, so that I can put it here, because if I keep this as it is selected ID, it won't work, because now the selected ID here is called as E. So that is why we need to pass it here as E. So let's save this and let's preview. Yeah, so if I click on this view details, awesome, like we are going to a next page, and this is how we are able to see these details, right? And one more important thing here is how this data is getting mapped here, right? Mapped as in, like, we have this URL, so with this URL whatever the data which is present into this schema with this submission ID would be coming, right? That is already we know. But how that data is getting mapped here, because when I have created this read-only module, okay, so here I have kept that same IDs. So when I'm getting the data from the submission, the object or that submission is having the same property IDs, right, which I have actually created here. And in the same way, these are also same. The other properties are also same. So that's why when we preview this, all these values get mapped here. So this is a read-only mode. And again, like if you want to go back to a previous page, the same logic we can use here is using a decision component, which is something like this. And here you can click on this page open or page, and based on this here you can apply this URL. So this is a URL which we have used to get the submissions, right? So get the submission data from that particular schema. But if you want to just navigate to a particular module, then you just need to put it up to this, right, where we have this concatenate display and the actual module. Other things you can skip. So this is a core thing where we want to, so this is a core thing if you want to deal with navigation. This is a URL that should be handy with you, and based on that your requirement you can tweak this. So yeah, hope this video is helpful for you. If you like this video, please like, please subscribe to the channel, and keep sharing these videos with others also. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.